Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to today's episode where we are going to be chatting with the beautiful Kari Russell. We're going to be chatting today about our upcoming book, Poems of the Heart. I am your host, Kara Roy, and I'm also one of the wonderful poets in this book. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Kari. She is a very special being to myself as well. She is one of my mentors. So if I'm smiling like a wonderful, crazy being throughout, it is because I love her so much. And I'm so excited to share this experience with you, Kari.
I'm so excited to be here.
So a little bit about Kari. Kari Russell is a self-expression and brand coach for online coaches and creatives. She's married with two children, and she lives in a small town in Ontario, Canada, where you'll find her tanning on her deck or submerged in her hot tub while reading romance novels for her spicy book club, The Tryst. Kari's bold, cheeky coaching style blends the psyche and the somatic to provoke her clients to untame and unshame their self-expression by reframing their perspective and reclaiming their power. Her signature framework guides her clients in knowing, honoring, and owning who they are with conviction to liberate and leverage their authenticity in their brand, content, and business their way. No rules, just sex. You can find Kari on her Instagram at I am Kari Russell, and also hosting her podcast, Sex Talk. Welcome, Kari.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is going to be such a special conversation. So just reading your introduction and reading about you, I just wanted to add in that Kari's magic is radiant. She allows you to show up in all the different ways that you are, and through all sorts of different styles of love, holds you in what you need. So she is an amazing being. And so our first question for today is, what inspired you to say yes to joining Poems of the Heart?
Fear. Fear. When the invitation was first presented, I instantly felt this like bodily yes, like my insides like just literally wanted to like jump out of my chest. And I was like, whew, okay, yes, this feels so exciting. And then instantly I'm like, but I'm not a poet. But I don't write poetry, but I'm not a writer. Like instantly all of those fears and all of those like little bitch sayings started to come up. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is an identity shift. Like this is really an invitation to walk my walk, to talk my talk, to really look at like why this opportunity is being presented to me at this time. And for like that split second, that fear was trying to take me out. And I was like, no, I am a writer. I do write poetry. And I'm excited because this has literally been so profound just in saying yes, not even writing of the poetry, but just in saying yes to the opportunity. And being surrounded by so many other incredible creatives and artists and poets. It's yes. So that's what inspired me, was fear. Fear to say yes.
Fear to say yes. I love that when fear just has this little moment of like, hey, I'm knocking at your door.
Yeah, it's just it really surfaced to show me how powerful our minds are when we tell ourselves who we are and who we're not. And so I've never connected with being a poet. That was never something that I would have called myself. And poetry units in school were always so uncomfortable for me. And like, here's a poetry unit. So I never identified with being a poet. But in having conversations with clients and with you and with some other individuals and looking back and really reflecting on how I express myself, I'm like, yeah, I write poetry. I am a poet. I can do this. And this feels exciting and expansive. So yeah.
So good. I can totally relate to that too, where it was also presented to me, and my first thought was, I'm not a poet. I've never been this and that and whatnot. And I was like, wait a second, this is an opportunity here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And going on that with opportunity, you mentioned that it really brought kind of that moment of walking your walk and talking your talk. Can you share a little bit, like, I know what your work is, but can you share a
Yeah.
little bit with everybody on what your work is and how this experience also helped you land deeper into the leader that you are?
Totally. So my work is all around our identity and our authentic self-expression, and really looking at who are we actually being in as the truth of who we are versus who we think we are, or who we've been taught to be, or who people have told us to be, and how we think we should be in the world. And so when this opportunity came forward, it was like, holy crap, here I am about to hold myself back in the exact work that I lead my clients through, that I talk about on my socials, that I talk about on my podcast. So it was one of those moments of like, if I'm going to be a leader of self-expression for others, it's like, I go first. I do the work. I look at my shadows. I look at my fear. And instead of hiding behind it, I leverage it. And it was all around this, like, can I be? And I think it surfaced where it's like, for me, poetry has always been thought of in my mind as like this soft expression, this like very soft and feminine and flowy. And for whatever reason, poetry and love and like that type of an energy. And for me, it was like, no, but I'm bold, I'm cheeky, I'm like that, like sting in your face. And so I had this like conflicting awareness over what I had made poetry mean and what actually poetry is, and how I express my art my way through poetry, which is exactly what I talk to my clients about, is like, so SX or sex instead of self-expression. It's like sex is art, and like it's messy and it's selfish and it's just you, like it's only about you and what's coming through you. So this was really that moment of being like, Kari, are you going to be who you say you are? Are you going to walk your walk? Are you going to talk your talk? Are you going to go first? Are you going to radically shift your perspective around what you've made something mean? And it was like, of course, yes. So yeah, it was really profound. And I think too, it just, in being a poet, it sounds like there's so much art behind it, and there's so much, being artistic and being poetic and all of these characteristics and adjectives that again have been new for me in my identity. And it was just a beautiful fusion of like, we're going to do this and we're going to do it our way. So
I'm so excited to hear that. It's so fun when that happens, when like exactly you're offered that moment of like, oh, I'm being offered this moment of how I show up, and I can decide to not go with it, but I can also decide to go with it.
exactly. Yeah.
And just going a little bit more on that, when it comes to the poem and the piece that you wrote, how did you find that the experience of, we'll say, the push and pull within, how did that come through in the creation or in the process of making the poem?
So that whole identity shift of being a poet, it was like I resisted it when it came to sitting down to write it. And I probably have like 10 like first lines of a poem or of the poem I was going to submit in my phone. And I kept being like, hey, today's the day I'm going to be a poet, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this poem. Like I had to, like, I was telling myself these things, and I started to realize it was creating so much pressure. It was like I was trying to write a poem. I was trying to be a poet rather than just letting my natural expression flow through, rather than just letting the natural poetry within me kind of come through. So to be honest, I wrote the poem that I submitted was written like 10 minutes before I submitted it. Like I worked out, I had a shower, I sat down, and it just came out of me. And I didn't go back. I didn't edit it. I didn't overthink it. It was just one of those, like, this is what's coming through me. This is what's meant to pour out of me. And I didn't give it, I didn't go in and try and like make it work or make it look like a poem. It was just, this is my submission. And then reading it and knowing it's like, it's so me, you know, like it's such a me way of speaking. So just goes to show like our true authentic expression, the way it naturally wants to flow out of us, like it cannot be forced. And so it's about giving ourselves that space and that grace to let it flow through when it's meant to flow through.
100%. And it's interesting how you say that it just flowed through and that's what you submitted, because I feel like there's a few other poets within the book as well that same thing happened, where you try to sit down and you're like, today's the day I'm going to like productively make my poem happen.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how creation and creative energy has this way of just being like, no, I'll come to you the weirdest time.
That's exactly it. And for me, you know, working out and like moving energy through my body has always been something like that's always where I have my creativity. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that it was after a workout that all of a sudden it decided to to land.
It just poured right out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it comes to working with Radhaa's Publishing House, how would you describe the experience in one word?
Oh, one word. The first word that came to my ear was easy.
I love that.
It was easy. And like ease filled in the process.
I love that. And then elaborating on that, what
Mhm.
was what was the process for you? Because you came on a little bit later into the project. So
Yes.
for the experience of coming into a project that quite a bit of it has already been, we'll say, put together, what
Yep.
would your experience, or did you find that there was any blocks potentially before or any of that?
Not I think for me, like because I knew I was one of the latecomers, there was like this sense of rushing on my part in order to catch up to so that I wasn't the one lagging the project behind, like that type of like internal responsibility piece. But that was all on me. Like that was all my stuff. That wasn't anything that was projected onto me. But coming into the project, it was like with the Facebook group and with my contact with you and with Sam, like the communication was very clear. The organization was very clear. It was very simple to submit my poem. Like the process, that's why I said easy. Like it was just a very easy to kind of like, even though I was a latecomer, I didn't feel like I was a latecomer. Like it was all there for me. And I just kind of like seamlessly was able to kind of like, whoop, and here I am.
I love that. And I can't remember, this is your second collaborative book, right? Because you've done another collaborative book with another group of beings. And so you've worked already with a group of beings before. And would you say that the experience from publishing to publishing has been similar, or were there any differences from Radhaa's Publishing House and working with this one?
I would say the experience as a whole was very different only because I was co-authoring a full chapter in a book the first time around. So there was a lot more, you know, it was like 5,000 words, 7,500 words versus, you know, a one-page poem. So my the behind the scenes preparation for the completion of the project was definitely more intense and involved. But I would say like both my experiences, like there was nothing that made this one like they were both very like considerate and compassionate of our artistic expression throughout the process. And I think what I really liked about this experience is that there was no editing happening. And so hearing that my poem wasn't going to be edited to fit the book was actually so freeing. So it was like, oh, okay, like none of my words are going to be changed. And so it was very like, this is all me, you know, that type of an ownership and like a very like cool feeling to know that nothing of my words were going to be touched or edited or filtered. It was just going to be my expression. So that was a really cool experience because with the book, there's obviously editing and typesetting and layout and all of that stuff happening behind the scenes. So this was a really cool experience that way.
Oh, I love that. And especially with how you run your Instagram too. You're so hands-on with your Instagram
Yeah.
because everything is you.
Yeah.
So it just adds that extra bit to it. And then throughout the process, did you find that you bumped into any creative blocks? If we go back to your poem, did you find that you ran into any creative blocks while, like not when you created the actual poem, but you said like you sat down, you wrote a line, you sat down and you wrote a line. Were there any creative blocks that came up in that moment or in those moments?
Yeah. Yeah, like I really felt when the opportunity first presented to me, like, and I had the deadline for the poem, I was like, oh yeah, no problem. Like it's gonna get done. Like there was no hesitation. So when I started to experience that resistance, when I sat down and like was trying to force the poem out of me, it just showed me how like it's such a habit to go to. It's like we logically want to start to plan things. We logically want to express our creativity and express ourselves. And so often we can't, it's not a logical process. You know, it's a visceral, it's a feeling, it's a sensation, it's an urge. It's like we have to let the creativity move us rather than trying to move the creativity through us. And so that's really was a big thing for me is like, right, where am I being impatient? Where am I trying to force it? Where am I trying to like nitpick and like cross all the, you know, dot all the I's and cross all the T's so that it looks right? It just brings up those like shadows that we sometimes think like, oh, I've already worked all through that, right? Like I write, like you said, I write all of my own content on my Instagram, and like I post in the moment. I don't content plan ahead. I don't batch create. So the process of creating and expressing quickly is part of who I am. So I just assumed it would be that same process, but it was a real big learning of like, oh, right, those tendencies to want to like perfect it and to make it look as good as the other poets in the book. And so that comparison piece came up, and just that like that forcing and really being invited to trust my voice and to trust my expression and to know that like my art is my art and it will land with the people it's meant to land with, and it won't with the people it's not meant to. And that's perfect. That's beautiful. So yeah, it was big identity work going on behind the scenes with this one.
I love that. And taking you out of your comfort zone and in new ways and in ways of seeing new sides of you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny because in the moment it felt really big. Like it felt like a real big moment. And now it's like, of course I write poetry. Like it went from being this like, oh my God, I could never, to of course I am, like so fast. So it was definitely, the opportunity was presented to me at like the most divine time, that like the right time for me to really step in and own this. And it's kind of like been like a stepping stone or like a springboard into a couple other ideas that have been brought forward since writing this poem. It was almost like it unleashed the floodgates. So I'm really excited.
It's the Pandora's box to your creation of a whole new world.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when it comes to once the book has been launched and has been shared, are there any ways that you would like to share the book with others around, or how do you plan on just sharing it a little bit more with the world?
Yeah, so I'm extremely active on my socials. So on Instagram, so it'll be something that like this, I've been holding back on sharing my story, you know, after this is all complete. So I will be starting to share more of the behind the scenes and the process, the artistic process that went into the creation of the poem, because that's what I love so much about other artists and other creatives is I like their story behind the art. It's like, I want to know, like, why did you pick that word? Like, what was it about that image that really spoke to you? Like, I love to see like the individual connection people have to their art and to how other people express and relate to other people's art. So I definitely see it being a conversation on my socials, on my podcast with my clients. Like you're at the time of this recording, you're the only one in my world who knows that this is something that I have done. So I'm excited to kind of like I must feel like strip the robe off and like walk into that identity publicly. So It's going to be a conversation piece. And I think too, it's like and I think this is more of like the coach in me coming through right now. We can create a lot of pressure or expectation on the completion of our art. And so, you know, it's like once I'm a published author, once I'm a published poet, then all of this. And so this is really just one of those, like, this is just another piece of art that I've created, right? It's just another piece of my expression that gets to live on long after I'm here. And that is really exciting. It's not even so much about like the in the moment now celebration. It's like, there's a part of me that's going to be out in the world long after I'm gone. So I love that. I love that like legacy creation aspect of when we get to step into these published pieces of work and putting our art on display. It's like we are literally leaving a part of our soul on this earth long after we're gone. So
I love that. Just that extra bit of self-expression to share with the world.
Yeah.
And with your poem, who would you say it's intended for? Is there a particular person that you had written it for, or is there, not to put it into branding like a target audience, but is there somebody in particular that you were aiming to have read it?
I think it's definitely for the individual who knows that they are like here to color outside the lines. Like they aren't here to be like the status quo doesn't excite them. You know what I mean? Like they have this wild feral energy in them, and they are brave enough and courageous enough to say yes to it. And they're brave enough and courageous enough to play in it. But they're still human in that exploration. And so there's still this, you know, mind inner chatter that can be like, you know, like that little bit of self-doubt or that little bit of second guessing. And so this piece is really, it's like, no, like, remember who the fuck you are. Like, this is who you are. This is why you're doing what you're doing. This is why you're being who you're being. So it's one of those, like, it's almost like a remembrance piece or a reclamation piece of being like, no, this is who you are, and don't fucking forget it.
Yes. Owning your shit.
Yeah.
So would you be comfortable sharing with us your beautiful poem?
100%. 100%. This is the first time I'm reading it out loud. I haven't actually read it out loud. So
have fun with it. I will mute myself so that you have the full floor.
Thank you. Yes. You said yes. Not because you knew, but because you trusted. You said yes. Not because it was logical, but because it felt euphoric. You said yes. Not because it was trendy, but because it was unconventional. You said yes. Not because it was proven to work, but because you knew you'd be okay if it didn't. You said yes. Not because it made sense, but because it didn't. You said yes. Not because you didn't feel fear, but because you did. Yes. You said yes. Thank you.
You are so welcome. I love that. It's so you.
No.
Hearing it, I was just like, it's just what it is just as one of Kari's clients, it's everything that you bring to your coaching, and it's the self-expression in the art form of it, of you had this decision to do and you're doing it. So stop second guessing it and do it. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
And it's so in line too with what you shared as well with the process and leading up to the expression of it.
I know sometimes in my coaching, I like to say, sometimes we coach what we need to hear. So sometimes in conversation with my clients, I'll coach something, be like, oh, I think maybe that was for me. You know, it's like, I think maybe that was meant to be for my ears too. And so reading this and writing this, it's like, I'm not only speaking to, you know, people, but I'm also speaking to that soul inside of me too. So, yeah.
And I also hear, it's interesting because I also hear in it like the motherly love
Mm,
of when you're talking with not so much, we'll say under like single digit age, not so much, but teen, like that's such a powerful way of expression during such years of questioning things.
mhm.
That coming back to you, and yes. Oh, I love it. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers before we go into how they can find you?
No, I just think, well, yes. So yes, I do have something to say. I think there is so much like pressure in the world. There's so much expectation in the world already. And so when we are stepping into our expression, when we are stepping into unearthing our authenticity in the world, the most gracious thing that we can do for ourselves is to release that pressure and to release that expectation, to truly just anchor into the truth of our self-expression and let that be enough. It's like we are always going to be growing and evolving. And I could sit down and write this poem tomorrow again, and it could sound completely different. And so, because we're always growing and evolving, our art is always going to grow and evolve. There is no perfect art. It's meant to be this like beautiful, authentic, present expression of who we are. So just trust that in the moment urge and let it out. Find a place, find an outlet, find a way to express it and expose it because it's coming through you, because it's meant to come through you. So just trust that.
Mm. What came through while you said that is our art is a present of our present moment.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
I love it. So
Mm.
where can anybody find you if they were curious to know more about you? What are the different places available?
Yeah, I would say first one being Instagram at I am Kari Russell. And then my podcast, which is available Spotify, Apple, all of them. And it's SX Talk. So S line EX Talk. And it's all about self-expression and identity and branding work in your life and your business.
And just to give you another moment to plug, if you're cool with it, if you would like to share a little bit about what your year studio subscription is, and then since we talked about the Tryst, what the Tryst is.
Beautiful. Okay, so studio, which is where I work with Care. Studio is my member mind, and it's all things self-expression. And so we were together all for 2024, and we meet weekly for embodiment and integration conversations, and is literally where I get to express all of myself as a business owner while helping and navigating and coaching and guiding my clients into unlocking their self-expression, to unshame and to untame, and to really be intentional and strategic in how they're leveraging their expression in their brands and their businesses. So studio is all things self-expression. We go into everything. And then the Tryst, which is included in studio, is my spicy book club where we use spicy romance novels to unlock where we are still holding on to shame in our bodies, in our desires, in our voice, in relationships, so that we can truly uncover the truth of who we are in our life and in our business.
Perfect. So well said.
Thank you.
And I would recommend both experiences. And if you are curious to work with Kari, the Tryst is a really nice introduction into all things Kari, and also into a different way of looking at book clubs, because it's not your traditional book club.
No, it's definitely not. And I think it brings, I think sometimes shadow work can feel heavy, like a heaviness to it. And the spicy, sexy romances brings this like levity to it, right? It brings this lightness, this cheekiness, this fun. So it's a great place to be.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, for chatting with us. Thank you for saying yes to being a part of Poems from the Heart. And the book will be launching soon. Stay tuned. And we'll keep you posted on how to check out our poems and everybody else who will be a part of this beautiful experience. So thank you for taking the time, to all of you. Have a beautiful rest of your day, Kari. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Mwah.
Sending you lots of love. Bye.